Morning, everyone. So today, when looking at this first slide, you can see 4 individuals. These 4 individuals all have one thing in common, and that's that they're smiling and they look extremely happy. But of course, I'm sure many of you know that 2 of these individuals have actually taken their own lives, and 2 of the other individuals suffer day by day, struggling with mental illnesses. So today, I want to welcome you to the blind side of anxiety and depression. Mental illness is increasing. There's an increase in suicide rates, dropout rates, as well as drug overdoses. The new statistic now shows us that 1 in 4 individuals will experience a mental illness at some point in their lives. But there is hope from these morbid statistics, and there is a new awareness around mental illness itself. There's a growing pressure to change the stigmatization, and this, I can proudly say, is being led by a generation, and that's our generation, that is woke to the psychological struggles of themselves and others. And I agree, this is a positive change. This is a change that has needed to happen for so long, and people are adapting to a new understanding of mental illnesses. There's 2 aspects to this new understanding that I find vitally important. The first is that mental illnesses are not solely mental, but they are physical too. And a prime example of this is panic attacks. If you haven't experienced a panic attack in your life, they're really hard to explain. But basically, it's like someone's wrapped a plastic bag around your chest and the air's being pulled out of you, and then your legs fail on you, and your adrenaline's through the roof. And it really is, it's quite gross because you're sweating profusely, and it's really dramatic, and it took a long time for me to come to grips with this, but it's really a time that we are proud that other people are starting to understand this as well. The second aspect is that mental illnesses are not general experiences, and they are individual experiences. So everyone who experiences a mental illness experiences it differently. And for this, just one example about work placement learning, I really enjoyed the fact that there was an open plan workspace and I could see who was coming, who was going. I felt like I could control my environment a little bit. But then someone else with the same anxiety may feel like Big Brother's watching them, and they may feel like their boss is constantly over their shoulder. So that's just an example to highlight to you that everyone with a mental illness can no longer be generalized under the same stereotype. So moving forward with this complex understanding, people are realizing that there's a need to change the stigma, but this need to change the stigma solely is not enough. People are starting to ask the question, how do you actually help people suffering these physical and mental consequences? It's not enough to talk about it when people you talk to who haven't experienced them cannot actually understand them, and you yourself cannot actually come to grasp with what you're going through on a daily basis. So we currently, as Joe mentioned earlier, we're sitting with the need to focus on something greater and to focus on the coping mechanisms. So the definition of coping mechanisms is ways in which internal or external stress is managed, acted upon, or adapted. So common coping mechanisms are meditation, journaling, and exercise. And with this understanding that coping mechanisms are so important, they've been taken into the workplace. And the most proactive example of this was by Richard Branson. So he implemented 4 rules for his company to help decrease anxiety and depression for his employees. And it was firstly, make mental illness a part of office dialogue. Secondly, create flexible work patterns. Thirdly, introduce approaches for stress management. And fourthly, provide professional support. These coping mechanisms and taking coping mechanisms into the workplace really does make a difference in the lives of people struggling with mental illnesses. But what I want to highlight to you today is one key aspect that I feel is missing in terms of coping mechanisms. A fundamental missing piece that could enhance the use of all other coping mechanisms, and it could help nurture individuals in a positive way. And this coping mechanism is a genuine human connection. So I first looked at the genuine human connection when I watched this talk by Simon Sinek, the interview that broke the internet. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. It's called "This is Why You Don't Succeed" to the millennial generation, which is really morbid for us millennials. But the main thing that I enjoyed and what I focused on was that he said, adolescents aren't forming deep, meaningful human connections because when they experience stress in their lives, they're turning to devices rather than to friends. And they've never had this need to actually learn this coping mechanism of turning to a friend. So I'm not going to agree with the whole speech of his. I'm not going to agree that it's generational or that it's primarily due to technology. Because in my experience, living with generalized anxiety disorder, panic attack disorder, and suffering from depressive episodes, coping really does become the primary factor. The cause becomes secondary to how you're going to live day by day. So what stood out to me is the fact that Simon Sinek said, genuine human connection is an essential coping mechanism. Genuine connection is defined as a sense of being open and available to another person, even as you feel they are open and available to you. And other ingredients of genuine connection are empathy and compassion. You feel goodwill to the person you connect with. And the evidence of these benefits are overwhelming. So firstly, relying on oxytocin as the main point, I just want to take you through a case study. The ethical reasoning behind the case study is quite questionable. It's from a while ago. But basically what they did was they took a group of young students and they put them into a stressful situation. And then after that, they removed them from the stressful situation, and half the group of students could go and talk to their mothers and experience a sense of genuine human connection. Well, the other half had to be placed in a room and they weren't allowed to interact with anyone else, which I'm sure was quite traumatizing for them. But what it did highlight was that there was a declined amount of oxytocin, which is the stress hormone released in stressful situations, with the individuals that did experience that genuine human connection with their mothers and did get that comfort from their mothers. Other benefits are that it can decrease cortisol, which is another stress hormone, as well as increase the immune system, which I'm sure we all need. And then, as Joe said earlier, it has a big role in epigenetics. So it alters the individual's gene activity without changing the DNA sequence itself. So it can skip that step and ultimately lead to a positive behavior change. And then the final benefit that I'm sure most of us want is a longer lifespan. So one study suggested that having a lack of social relationships is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So yeah, smokers out there, I hope you have friends. So genuine human connection for me is undeniably a coping mechanism. But just if you're not properly with me, this is my experiential proof. Before I came to Red and Yellow, I went to Stellenbosch University for 3 years, and I had one psychology lecturer who I want to tell you a story about. I went to her, I think in 3rd year, after having a very failed attendance class mark, and I said to her, listen, I'm not coming to your class because I keep having panic attacks every time I walk into your lecture hall. It was a really big lecture hall and I felt trapped and claustrophobic. And basically what she said to me was, there's nothing really I can do for you. You either got to come and sit in the front and suck it up and you can leave if you want, or you can fail your class attendance mark. So I got 4% for my class attendance mark. But then this year, the environment has really changed everything for me. I've made better, genuine human connections with everyone in this room than I have in many of my past years. And it's because everyone came in here to be open to each other, knowing that we were going to be doing teamwork. Everyone was very vulnerable and about being themselves. I've experienced more compassion and empathy in terms of my anxiety and depression, and I cannot thank all of you enough. So through all my research, I would just like to end off with a final thought. It's not a one-way street. Genuine human connection is a give and take like no other. Because while you may think that individuals suffering from mental illnesses need saving, At the same time, individuals who do not have mental illnesses may also need saving from a world where they don't understand where they don't understand empathy, compassion, and genuine human connection. Because if there's anything I've learned from my experience with the loneliness of depression and anxiety, is that you become that much more appreciative of being yourself with one of your friends and sitting in silence and not feeling awkward, and of simply having that genuine human connection. Thank you.